Free will is a very interesting topic. Some people think it is an illusion, and others think it is real. Personally, I think it is. It is real. It is very real. So in this video, I try to take on one of the popular arguments against against the idea of free will. I'm going to play just a portion of this video. I think I'm going to put the link to the full video in the description of this video. But this is only part of that video. I'm going to give my response at the end of it. So here it is, and I really hope you watch the entire video. Thank you.
Here is my case against free will. Now, the first issue that we have to face is, of course, the definition of free will. And since when I'm debating this, I'm the one who's denying the existence of something that someone else believes in, it really needs to be that someone else's definition that I'm using, which is why a video like this can be quite tricky. Now, this doesn't absolve me of any burden of proof. Unlike my passive atheism, I make the active claim that I think free will does not exist. But I can only do this once I'm sure that we all mean the same thing by free will. So for ease's sake, I'll go with the most succinct and least controversial definition that I've been able to come up with, which is this. Free will is the ability to have acted differently. And what I mean by this is that if we were to wind back the clock in any situation, it was completely within the realm of possibility for you to have acted differently to the way that you actually did. For instance, it would have been completely possible for me to have said bonjour at the beginning of this video instead of good morning, and the choice to say the latter was completely within my control. The idea is that you are in control of your actions, and any decisions that you make are determined only by your own conscious self. But the thing is, there are so many things wrong with this that it's difficult to know where to start. I'll borrow a line of thought from Dr. Harris here. Let's begin by considering what would have to be true in order for us to truly have total free will, to be able to have acted differently. Well, firstly, we would need to be aware of everything that is influencing our actions, including environmental factors, our precise mood, the influence of other people, the influence of past experiences, and more. Secondly, we would need to be in complete control of every one of them. Neither of these are true or even possible. Now, you might concede this but not think it a problem. Okay, you say, so I can't control all of the factors that led me to like the taste of ice cream, but on a more mundane level, I'm still in complete control over whether I choose chocolate or vanilla. Not so fast. Again, consider this most simple of choices, chocolate or vanilla. Or, if it's easier, consider the last mundane choice that you had to make. Walk or drive this morning, go out or stay in tonight. Think about why you chose one or would choose one over the other. So what would make me choose vanilla over chocolate? Well, there is only one possible answer, which I'll elaborate on shortly. I would need to want it more than chocolate. In order to choose vanilla, I'd need to want vanilla. But is this something I can control? Can I control what it is that I want? Not a chance. Consider the fact that you, presumably, don't want to punch your mother in the face. Can you choose to want to do that? This isn't the same thing as choosing to do it. Could you choose to want to? No, no more than I could choose to want vanilla over chocolate. I just want chocolate more than vanilla. That's just a fact about myself that I can't change. But okay, let's go further, you say. Of course, I can't choose to want vanilla over chocolate when I really want chocolate, but what if I just decided, in the full knowledge that I would prefer chocolate, to go for vanilla anyway, just for the sake of regaining my free will and nothing else? Well, I'm afraid you'd still face the same problem. The exact same problem, in fact. In order to do that, you'd need to want to regain your free will as you see it. Why is your desire to prove a point like this stronger than the desire to have the ice cream you prefer? It just is. And if it happened not to be, you'd have chosen the ice cream that you do prefer. The key takeaway is this: you cannot determine your wants. Think of something you want. Try to not want it. Think of something you don't want and try to want it. It's not possible. And even if it were, in order to change a don't want into a want, you'd need to want it. And vice versa, to change a want into a don't want, you'd need to want to not want it. You simply can't control what you want. Now, that's one piece of the puzzle, and it may seem odd to leave it there, but just wait until we put them together. Okay, the next piece of the puzzle is to convince you of this fact, that there are only two reasons, none more in any circumstances, for which you will ever do anything. In fact, it's impossible for you to ever do anything for any reason other than one of these two. And those two reasons are because you want to or because you're forced to. And this is fundamentally important and worth really understanding and thinking about. You will only ever do anything in your entire life because you either want to or are forced to. That's it. No exceptions. And because of the fact that nobody seems to believe me on this point at first, I'll give you a common objection that I hear all the time. In fact, I recently spoke to ex-NFL player Arian Foster about free will on his podcast. Link again will be in the description once it's up. And he, playing devil's advocate, brought up the following. Consider exercise. Consider going to the gym. Most people don't want to go to the gym, but they do it anyway. Surely this is an example of someone doing something freely and not because they want to or because they're forced to. Not really. Because there has to be a reason for going to the gym. And for most people, and for Arian, it's something like to stay healthy, to stay in shape, to live longer, whatever it may be. So we have to ask again the same fundamental question. Why is the desire to stay healthy stronger than the desire to go to the gym? It just is. Or maybe it isn't, and some people stay at home and eat junk food instead. For these people, why is the desire to sit around or to eat junk food stronger than the desire to be healthy? It just is. Again, remember, you can't control the strengths or objects of your desires. It's they that control you. And if that doesn't unease you, repeat those words again to yourself until it does. So even when you don't want to do something but you do it anyway, this is only ever because of a stronger and equally uncontrollable desire to do something that requires you to do it. In other words, all of your actions really are controlled by your wants. And I really mean this. This is what really convinced me of the non-existence of free will. If you aren't convinced that everything you do is either because you want to or because you're forced to, please pause the video and just really think about this. I promise that any example you can think of has a hidden want lying behind it. Leave an example in the comments if you have to. I'm sure someone else can find it if you can't. So now, as promised, let's start putting this together. There are two reasons you will ever do anything, because you want to or because you're forced to. Of course, if you're forced to do something, then you're definitely not acting freely, and nobody would deny that. So that just leaves your wants. But, well, we've already concluded that you can't control your wants, so actions motivated by wants aren't really free either. So being forced to do something isn't free will, and wanting to do something isn't free will. But being forced or wanting to do something are the only reasons why you do anything. Hence, free will is conclusively an illusion.
First of all, as human beings, we don't have total free will. So maybe those that do make the argument against free will, maybe they are partially right. There are certain things as human beings that we just can't do. Like, you can't walk through a wall. You can't jump 50 feet even if you wanted. And then I wouldn't agree with the fact that for us to be able to have free will, we need to be able to know all the factors that do influence our decisions, and we also need to be able to control all of them. I disagree with that for two main reasons. The first being, even if you knew all the factors that influence your decisions, and even if you could control all of them, in most cases you find that wouldn't change the decision that you make, because ultimately people do make decisions depending on what makes them feel good, regardless of whether it is dangerous, regardless of whether it will hurt them later on in life. They make decisions without regard to their consequences, just because at the time it makes you feel good. So I don't think I don't think a person knowing all the factors influencing their decision making and whether they had the power to control those factors would change the decisions they make. And the second reason as to why I disagree with that statement is going back to the actual definition of free will. If you are defining free will as the ability to have acted different, what does this statement mean? It means to be able to act different, you need two main conditions to be fulfilled. The first being you need the alternatives. And in most situations, in most scenarios, we do have the alternatives, even in situations where you seem like you have only one choice. The other alternative would always be not to take that choice. I know it may be irrational, it may have serious consequences, but the reality is ultimately you have at least two choices in most scenarios where you're given free will. And the other fact that you need, the other condition required for free will is the acting agent. And now, if you have to focus on those two conditions, you realize that regardless of whether you are aware of these other factors or regardless of whether you could control these other factors, those two conditions are always met. And for me, that alone implies that we always do have free will. Yes, we may not have total free will as human beings in all aspects of our lives, but in the finite spaces we are given to exercise our free will, it is just enough space for us to be able to gauge, what is really in people's hearts and minds. Given how someone exercises their free will, you can tell who an evil person is. It is just enough. So we may not have total free will. We may not have total free will in life completely, what you would define as total free will, but ultimately it is just enough to make a point. And now, for the case of the wants, I do believe that we really do have control over our wants and desires, but not in the way that we think. Even if we couldn't control our wants, we would still have free will, because if you go back to the definition of free will, all that is required for you to have free will is the alternatives and the acting agent. As long as those two conditions are met, you have free will. I guess that is a very crude response to that argument. But I know what Alex meant was, since we can't control our desires, therefore we're just spectators as they make these decisions for us, and we shouldn't be held responsible for these decisions. But the thing is, these desires, they are very funny things. The way they operate is very funny, and I think to best explain this, I would use an example of a standing order with a bank. You authorize your bank to make specific regular payments to another account. As long as you give them the authorization, they'll keep making these payments, and as they make these payments, it will kind of be an extension of your free will. And so that is kind of how these desires operate. That you have control over them when they're just setting out, when they're just beginning. That is when you give them the authorization to act on your behalf. So whatever decisions they make on your behalf later on in life, by extension, you're responsible for those decisions. I would use two images to help explain how these desires operate. These desires operate. Think of the image of a fish and a hook. Before this fish bites onto this hook, it has the free will to decide whether to bite the hook or mind your own business, like ignore the hook altogether. Because the moment you bite onto this hook, you surrender your free will. Like whatever happens after that action of biting on the hook is out of your control, and that is how these desires operate. So it is very important for us to pick and choose these desires before we let them into our lives. And I'm sure for most cases, for the most dangerous desires, in most cases, as these desires are starting out, we are normally given advice, but as human beings, I guess we have a problem with following good advice. In most cases, we do ignore this good advice, and that is how we end up in situations where that's how we do end up in uncomfortable situations later on in life. And the other image that I would use is the image of having a pet lion. If you want to have a lion as a pet, when it is still a young cub, it is important for you to teach it how to eat vegetables. And I don't think I have to explain why. It's kind of like what happened in the story of the Lion King with Timon, Pumbaa, and Simba. So, for these desires, we actually do have control over these desires. But we have to look back at where they all start. That is where we do have the free will. That is where we're supposed to exercise our free will. But at this point later on in life, as these desires have matured, we don't. Yes, you can actually do exercise your free will even over a mature desire, but it is hard. Not impossible, but hard. But the thing is, even with our desires, we actually do have free will over them.